guys have been friends for a long time. Both live here in Mansfield more than 30 years. Roy grew up here, graduated from Mansfield St. Peter's, and we're talking about the events of the day. Right now we're taping this on July 8th, so I just wanted to present that out there in full disclosure. But some of the events that we're going to be talking about are relevant across time, and I think one of the things that we were just talking about before we went live here, or went on video, I guess I should say, was an issue that you have kind of a vested interest in. Is Governor Mike DeWine is allowing school districts to decide if teachers would be armed in the classroom. And my wife's a teacher. She has a very strong viewpoint on that. And as you were talking about before we began this, it's an issue that really came to the fore here within the last month with the school shootings. And the controversy is, does it give power to a teacher, or does it raise an expectation on a teacher? What's your take on that?
Well, you know, it's very tough. It's difficult because we've come to a time where, quite honestly, the thought of a teacher in a classroom with a gun is very unsettling. I didn't get an education, and no educator got into the business thinking that one day we might have to be armed in the classroom, or have the opportunity, if we so choose, to be armed in the classroom. So that's a very unsettling thought. But when I look at it on the other hand, it's very unsettling when you think about a teacher and his or her students lying in pools of blood in their classroom. It's very unsettling when an active gunman is in your school building. And when you just about Uvalde, I mean, Uvalde probably shook me more than any of the others. They're all
say that. You know, you contacted me as soon as that happened.
Yeah.
You said, "Hey, Larry, we need to talk about this." And that was kind of the impetus of this, was Uvalde, and how, well, I mean, there's several layers to it. The law enforcement's reaction to it, the response time, and then someone would argue their inaction once they arrived on the scene, and parents being not allowed to come to the aid of their children, and Mike DeWine's, I don't know, would you say that Mike DeWine had a response to Uvalde? Was that do you think the primer to his action?
I think it's led to a lot of people thinking is the solution allowing teachers to be armed. You know, when we think about response time, a lot of people have this, I really say it's a disillusion that, you know, St. Pete's, because we're so close to, you know, the police department, that response time is boom, instantaneous. So it might be a couple minutes. And in the grand scheme of things, 2 minutes, 3 minutes of response time is not bad. That's great. But when you're talking about an active shooter, 2 or 3 minutes might as well be 2 or 3 hours. And I think a lot of people in the public have this thought that if you allow teachers to be armed, that one, remember now, it's a choice, okay? Every teacher does not have to be armed. It's people who would choose to, and you have to go through training. I was watching something on CNN not too long ago, and they were looking at a school district in Utah where they had an extensive 6-week program that teachers had to go through. And it's not
had
like,
to go through?
if
So they're
you choose.
required. Okay.
It's required. If you're a teacher that's taking the option of being armed in the classroom, you have to take this 6-week course.
Okay.
And it's not one of those where it's cookie cutter, you take it, you pass. No, you have to meet all requirements to do so. And I think a lot of people have this illusion that if teachers are armed, that they'd be running through the building playing junior cop. I made it very clear. I mean, I have my concealed carry. I've had it for years. I actively carry. As the old saying, you know, don't leave home without it. I don't. I've had above and beyond training with members from law enforcement, and I've had that for years and years and years. My thought is, I would not run around school playing junior cop. I would be sheltering in place with my students. I think take the firearm out of it. Any teacher who has a classroom, our number one responsibility are the students in our room, and we would shelter in place and do all we can to protect those students. And the beautiful the beautiful Shakespearean thing that we hear from a lot of these stories is how teachers sacrifice themselves and put their lives on the line to protect the children in the room. That's our number one responsibility when a kid walks into our classroom. So armed or unarmed, I mean, a teacher would not leave their room. But I think it adds a layer of security. I'm not gonna lie, would I feel more secure if something tragic would be happening in St. Peter's and I have more than a baseball bat? Absolutely. I think a lot of people think teachers are gonna be running around the building playing cop. No, because when law enforcement enters the building, they don't know the difference between good guy, bad guy.
Right. I think that's an important point too. You know, how do you how do you differentiate yourself from a threat to the authorities who don't know who the threat is once they enter the building?
Right.
They have training in that too?
I would like to see what they do with those teachers there, because I'm for sure that has to be a very important part of it. Now, what do you do once you know there's a law enforcement presence in your building?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think you'd be wearing a bright yellow vest that says I'm the good guy.
Right.
You know, so that's all part of it too. You know, but it's tough. Who would have thought we'd have been in times like this?
Right.
You know, where that's part of the discussion that we're having.
So what struck, you know, a chord in you about Uvalde that was, when Columbine happened, it had that effect on me, but I think I'm not unique in that. I think that had that effect on everybody, because that was the first time, and that was before he was born. Our video guy is Brian Phillips, who's my son.
Yeah, he's not pointing to just like a space subject.
He's born in 2004. Columbine happened, I believe, in 1999, if I remember right. But we actually saw video of the kid live, of the kids running out of school. It was, you knew what was going on inside. It was in your face, what was happening. And I don't know the history of school shootings, if they happened before. They probably did. But it was not a national, everybody has access to see what the hell's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And the nightmare was in our face. But you know, we had, I think Chardon was an hour away.
Right.
It's happened in Ohio. It's happened all over the United States. I don't mean, you know, weekly, it's not like that, but it is happening frequently enough that we're having this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
What about Uvalde struck that kind of chord with you?
I would say the visual. You know, my wife teaches K through 3 Title I reading in the Worcester Tri-Way school system. It's a system she grew up in. Her story is very similar to mine. She graduated with Tri-Way and she teaches in the system. The visual of when the gunman enters the building, the teacher's going to close her door and he's standing there and he pushes the barrel in her chest and says good night, and then we all know what happens up. There was something about that where I'm like, oh my God, that's my wife's environment. Now, I'm not saying, you know, gosh, my wife she should be armed. No, but that's my wife's environment. The thought of little kids, you know, it's bad enough. The gun violence we have in our country and the young people, I mean, the CDC stated about a month ago, the #1 cause of death for young people in our country, gun violence. Not pediatric cancer, not mishaps, not absent-minded things where a little kid chases a ball in the street and doesn't look both ways and tragically gets hit, or chases the dog across the street and tragically gets hit, things like that. The #1 cause of death for youth in our country is gun violence. There was something about Uvalde when it happened, it rippled me. And the thought of the terror those kids experienced, the teachers experienced. And now finding out, you know, I don't want to call it the Uvalde conspiracy, but the lack of response. I hope we never become numb to this. It needs to be a talking point. And what happens in this country is when something tragic happens, or something social comes to the forefront. We talk about it ad nauseum for weeks and weeks, and then it just kind of goes away. This can't go away. If we don't learn from Uvalde, I don't know if we're ever capable of learning. We should have learned it from Sandy Hook. But change has to come about. There are people a lot smarter than you and I who are making these decisions, and they need to make decisions to hopefully ease this plague that's in our country. But, you know, violence in schools seems to be on the forefront. Seems like something happens every year, and sadly it seems to be more frequent. But the thought of kids, I mean, I hope parents understand that when the kids enter a building and come into our classroom, we do care for them. You know, we do put their security at a forefront. My 34 years of education, I can honestly say, I don't know if I've come across a teacher that at the end of the day does not care for the kids that come into their classroom, the safety of those kids. And the fact that we're put in that position with this rash of violence over and over, it's heartbreaking.
One of the things that I think I want to be clear about is, you know, as a gun owner and a concealed carry guy, I'm not hearing you say, you know, I want to ban guns. I'm hearing you say, I want to figure out how can we make the kids safer in our schools. Is that correct?
Oh, most definitely. You know, I wish the 5 wealthiest people in the United States would get together and say, what can we do to put an armed resource officer in every school, not in every school district, but every school. I'd love for the Warren Buffetts of the world to get together and say, what can we do with that? The Elon Musk, that's great, Elon. You can create rockets that go all over, and that's beautiful, that's great. You know, what about investing into the safety of our youth? You know, I mean, could they possibly do that? You know, could the Bill Gates of the world, the Warren Buffetts, the Elon Musk, you know, throw in LeBron James is $1 billion athlete now.
Yeah.
You know, could they all pull their money together and say, what can we do to provide a safer environment for our students? Is the answer teachers with guns? No, I'm not going to say that. But if it comes down to protecting the environment and integrity of the classroom, well, what is the answer?
I wonder if we're pivoting towards maybe not necessarily a law enforcement officer, but someone in the building.
Mm-hmm.
Is someone in the building who is trained, and that becomes a part of the school's faculty. You know, it can be a teacher, it can be a coach, it can be an administrator, it can be maybe a retired cop.
Right.
You know, I don't know. Do you think we're moving in a direction like that? Because I don't know that it's really, and I don't want to take an opinion on it, but I don't know from a kind of an up here, you know, 10,000 foot view, is it really practical to say we've just got to get rid of guns in the United States? I don't know that that's practical.
No, I don't think it is, because I'll say this. As a teacher, if a student does something wrong in a classroom, I don't punish the whole class. That student faces consequences. You know, I do think there's a valid argument for law-abiding citizens who have weapons and do nothing wrong and treat the weapon with respect and they're no threat to anyone. You know, why should I, as a law-abiding citizen, or you as a law-abiding citizen, be restricted from owning a firearm? And we've done nothing wrong, but we're being punished because of the actions of idiots out there. But I also say this, and it's going to tick people off. You know what? I've also had, as part of my DNA, I've always believed law enforcement should never show up to a scene and they're outgunned. I know there's a valid argument for people out there who own firearms and they say, I want an AK-47, I want an AR-15. You know, I don't break the law. Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I? And I say, that's great. I fully understand that. But you know, at some point in time, when are we going to step back and say, if me not being able to purchase an AR-15, if me not being able to purchase AK-47, if that means it makes it a little bit safer for the average citizen out there, okay, so be it. So be it. No, I do not believe in the fear mongering. If we allow the government to restrict us there, then Next, you know, they're gonna do like some states where magazine for your handgun cannot be a capacity over 10 rounds. You know, they're gonna say, well, if we allow them to do that, then they're gonna start restricting, and then every state, magazine capacity for your handgun can't be over 10. If we allow them to do that, then pretty soon they're gonna say, well, your magazine can have a capacity over 5. And there's some people say, well, sure, you take away this weapon and you're not able to purchase this weapon, you know, it's not gonna stop the shootings. No, it's not. No, it's not. But what we're doing is trying to do things common sense wise to make it somewhat safer.
Mhm.
You know, the guy who did the shooting in Illinois.
Right.
Okay, so let's say he didn't have access to that weapon, but it was a handgun. It still happened. People who want to perpetrate evil will still find a way to perpetrate evil, no matter what restrictions are out there.
Right.
So if it wasn't the long weapon that he had, maybe it'd have been a handgun. Okay, and then the people on the argument side will say, see, he still had access to a gun. We're not saying take away all guns. By no means do I want that to happen. But we have to come to a common ground to where we stop turning the television on. And this is happening over and over and over and over. And it's the same style of weapon over and over and over.
So, do you see anything trending in the education? I know you're working in a private school, so maybe you're not as plugged into the public school.
I call that stupid now.
Not at all.
I took this abuse for years. Now the whole world, Larry Phillips, called me stupid and uninformed. And he's not the first person. Hear from my wife every day.
Is there anything that you see trending or future ideas that might be on the table that could come into play in the next, say, 18 months that would address school safety, in particular keeping people out that pose a threat?
What do you mean?
Like, we've seen in some cities have implemented metal detectors.
Mhm.
We've seen, like you said, some schools have a school resource officer for a district, not necessarily
Right.
for a building. Is there anything on the table that they're looking at to enhance school safety that you know of?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, part of Governor DeWine, didn't he state that there will be funding for more school resource, allocation of school resource? So I don't know what that means
Yeah, I
in
don't
political
either.
speak.
Yeah.
You know, you made the comment about a school resource officer for a district. I have a buddy who, in his school district, you know, he said they have a resource officer for 5 buildings.
Yeah.
You know, and one day the resource officer might be in the high school, next day junior high, then the 3 elementaries that feed into the system. You know, and he's obviously on call if something happens, but he's 8 to 10 minutes away from, you know, the nearest building. I mean, law enforcement will be there. Their response will be quicker than him.
Right.
You know, metal detectors, now tell me if I'm wrong, metal detectors, someone has to be there to man the metal detector when you walk through. So who is that going to be?
Right. Is that part of the resource officer's job?
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't get your 96-year-old librarian to stand there and the metal detector goes off and some 6'4" hulking kid comes through and she's trying to shake him down. You know, who's manning the metal detector? So now you're also talking about that has to be staffed, you know.
You know, and it's not like there haven't been any safety measures at all. I mean, you
Right.
can't, like the Uvalde guy got in a door that's normally locked, and it was not in this situation, but at St. Pete's, you have to be buzzed in just to get into the parish center, and then once you're there, you have to be buzzed in again to get to, so it's not like,
Right.
you know, same way at and Senior High. Madison Senior High both have, you know, there's a camera you have to look into, and they have
Columbine
issues.
changed so much, because I remember
Exactly.
before Columbine, you know, kids were bringing backpacks into the classroom and that wasn't an issue, and access getting in and out of the building really wasn't that difficult, because we always thought, well, the kids need to be able to get in. You know, we never thought about locking doors and having just a central way to get in and no backpacks in the classroom and, you know, things like that. I mean, you're right. I mean, St. Pete's, I will say, we've made a lot of changes where it's difficult. The kids know that at 8 o'clock, just to go up to the door, you're not getting in, you have to be buzzed in, and if no one's in the office, you have to go to Paris Center and buzz into Paris Center just to get into a set of doors to where they buzz you into another set of doors. You know, so I applaud our school that we've made gradual changes over the years, and I would say all schools have in some way. The Uvalde, if I'm not mistaken, a teacher thought when she closed the door, she thought she closed it hard enough to where it locked, and it didn't. I don't know if there was negligence of leaving it open. I think she actually closed the door thinking it had closed fully behind her, and it didn't. I mean, that just, what bothers me about that, I read something this week that there was actually a police officer who had the gunman in his sights and was waiting for confirmation that he could engage, and did not get confirmation, and actually saw him walk in the building. Now again, if that's true or not, because so many false things have come out, but I saw that in the news, that, you know, and if that's confirmed to be true, I mean, my gosh, you know, I had an assistant coach tell me once, tell the team once, we were setting up a special that we want to run the last 30 seconds of a quarter, last 15 seconds.
And the special is a design play.
Design play, for a design play.
For non-sports fans.
For non-sports fans out there. And after we get done running all the options and look, you know, the assistant coach, he said to the team, he goes, but remember, if things break down, let common sense rule over everything. And I use that as a thing in life. Let common sense rule over everything. There's so many things that happen or did not happen in Uvalde. You think, let common sense rule on how you should respond and how you should go about your business there. And so I just hope when it comes to all of this, we let common sense rule over everything.
I like that as a good point to leave off here. Join us again next time. Thank you.